birthed by seed. I need so little to thrive. Rain and sun alone allow me to thrive. Undisturbed, I grow tall, beautiful, and strong. From the earth I sprout. I do no wrong. My sisters and brothers once stood tall with me. Their echo pains my soul. They're now gone, you see. They did no harm, yet lost their life to the developer's design and lumberjack's knife. Their sweet leaves, I remember well. We give all we have through fruit, shade, and breath, through branches that reach high and roots seeking deepest depth. Second only to fire, man is our most frightful foe. This truth pains us greatly, fills our souls with sorrow. We live simply, nourish freely. This is our charge as trees. None who love the earth ever be our enemy. We share our gifts and bounty, our beauty for all to see. From dawn's time, we emerged from Mother Earth and shall remain long past man's eternity. Hear this, with just one seed, we trees shall forever be. The tree speaks.
License and registration, he can sense your aggravation.
On the head of the fallen angel.
When the world is muttering under the floorboards, stomp even louder.
Time.
Let them know you are alive today.
Or unhum.
Did you know that your hands came with a ripple effect?
Whisper tones unraveling like silk.
Blood, sweat, and tears win by any means poetry.
Sway, look at me. Is a piece of the pie too good for me?
Some may call it rock the mic. We call it poetry.
Hello, welcome to Sojourn with Words. I'm Sistah Joy, your host, and I am so very glad that you joined us once again as we bring poetry to life. Today, I'm excited because we have a poet who is, well, he's from over the waters, shall we say. My guest poet today is Cathal Mac Thréinhfir, and he's joining us from the Midwest coast of Ireland, near the city of Limerick. Now, Cathal is retired and spends his time writing, reading, and painting. He is, well, he worked as a teacher, a trainer, and instructor in public service, working for the Irish government's National Training Authority for over 20 years. Now, I met Cathal at a weekly virtual poetry series, Friday Lunchtime Poetry on Zoom, which is hosted by one of Cathal's fellow Irish poets based in Ennisclare, Ireland, and well, Ennis County, Clare, Ireland. From my vantage point as a poet based on the East Coast of the US, the series name is a bit of a misnomer because while it may be lunchtime in Ireland where it's hosted, the time difference means it's 8 a.m. for us here on the East Coast of the US. But of course, I'm very glad to have met great poets such as Cathal and others that participate there in Ireland and increasingly from around the world in the Friday Lunchtime Poetry on Zoom series. And I want to take a moment to give a huge shout out and thanks to Martin Vernon for hosting the series each Friday since the onset of COVID-19 pandemic. So Cathal, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us here on Sojourn with Words.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
The significance of you joining us from Ireland is something that I know that you've experienced poets from different parts of the world, as all of us on that particular Zoom, but I'm sure you've had other experiences as well. Talk to us about how we use words to describe a sense of place with your poetry and even the poetry that you read. Are you drawn to poetry that does that? And how do you incorporate that technique in your writing?
Well, very much so. Yes, very much so. I think it might be an Irish thing, really. We have a particular link to the land, and it means it has a particular special meaning for many, particularly in the past, and it's been reflected in the poetry. And I have been drawn to people like Seamus Heaney, obviously the Irish poets, W. Yeats, going right back to the Middle Ages, really. And also poets from abroad I found very fascinating and interesting, but it has been something I'm very interested in, of course, Joy. It's the linkage to the land and how we describe our place and our place in it. The thing in Ireland is that we use language to describe rocks and hills and valleys and wells. They have a history to them. The name can describe a place, describe the type of land it is, what's growing on it. And indeed, in the past, things like wells were places of pilgrimage and became holy wells in the Christian faith. But prior to that, in the pagan times, there were also areas of worship for gods and goddesses. The same idea with hills and mountains. So there's a very strong link there, I have to say. And I do feel it. I feel it in the poetry I read. And I try to reflect it in some of the writings I'm writing myself. And hopefully today I can give your viewers some idea of some of my writing and how I'm trying to encapsulate that, get arms around that idea of land and heritage, homeland, remembrance. Remembrance is very important as well, because there's memory in a lot of the rocks and the hills and the wells, and it's about remembering as well. So yeah, that's really what it's all about.
When you're talking about poetry as a poet in Ireland, and you talk about homeland, and I understand the significance. First of all, the Irish landscape is phenomenal. The land is one of beauty and history. So when you talk about homeland and heritage, does it connect you to your immediate ancestors, or does it connect you to your culture as a whole? What is your approach to writing when you're speaking of homeland and heritage?
Well, that's a good question. For some that write, it is connection to the town, the home place they're in, their families, their brothers, their cousins, their uncles, their grandfathers, their grandmothers. You'll see that very much in Seamus Heaney's work. He writes a particular beautiful poem about him in the kitchen, and the aunt is baking and the mother's nearby and the clock is ticking on the wall. It's very much linked to his home and to his people. So in that sense, yes, that's part of it, Joy, yes. I wouldn't have that immediacy as such, because I wouldn't have an extended family anymore based around Ireland. But he definitely came from that background, and many writers here do, and they express that in their poetry and have done. The other aspect that you're quite right to point out is the idea of myth and heritage, of myth and story. And Ireland is very steeped in that. So are all the Celtic countries. You go to Wales, you go to Scotland, you go to the north of France, and even parts of Spain, you will find that there's that commonality of myth. There's a line, there's a golden thread that links all those countries together in the past. I'm talking thousands of years now. I'm talking definitely pre-Christian. And the heritage is there, both in the stones, the land, the wells, the mountains, but also in some of the writings that's been left. So people have gained inspiration from some of the old sagas and the tales from that time. So it's very much a dual thing, Joy. It's a duality there. You have people who are born and have a sense of place from their father, their mother, their grandparents. And I'm sure you have that where you came from as well, Joy. This is not unique to Ireland. I'm sure everybody has that. We all have that, human species. But the thing in our culture would be then the myth and mythology that you're linked to.
Right.
You have it too among the American Indians in America. You have it, among the Spanish settlers and also in South America. Every country has that. You have also the African tradition, the African heritage there that I'm sure a lot of people of African descent would link back to as well. The stories, the sagas. Every
Yes.
nation, but
Exactly.
it's pretty common in the Celtic world,
Well, certainly in the African culture, we're talking about the griot who hands the history of the culture down generation to generation. That storytelling griot. But when we talk about Ireland versus, well, let's go back to America. This country is only hundreds of years old. We're not thousands as is Ireland. And so that makes a difference in even the approach to writing, because we would land on other shores if we reach back to the thousands of years that Ireland has within its own shores. So how does that result in a different approach to writing for Irish poets, or for those of us who are delving into poetry by poets from Ireland?
Yes, you're right to point out the couple of hundred years, particularly with America. But of course, it's much more ancient than that. You have the heritage of the Indian peoples that were there, of course. But if we all look at the African people, you mentioned the poet who handles down the tradition and the African heritage. Well, that's how it was handed down in the Celtic world as well. It was handed down by poets, by what are called Fili. There were Druids, basically, and the Druid class had several levels of it. There could be ambassadors, doctors, writers, magicians, doctors, as I say. So a similar tradition again, because again, you're dealing with oral traditions there. I'm sure it's the same in Africa as well, that they were mainly oral initially. It affects Irish writers, or has done anyway, because it's part of who we are. It's hard to take it out and put it in a frame and point at it and say that's what it is. I was listening to poetry readings a few weeks back. They were introducing some young poets, Poetry Ireland. And there's a young man who read at it. He's a native Irish speaker, and he's studying Irish in one of the universities here. But it was fascinating. He began to read poetry he had written in the form of medieval Druidic poetry, the ancient Gaelic type of poetry. And here he was, a young man, 23, and he's writing in that form. It was fascinating to see. So the line is very easy to tap into if you're brought up in that tradition,
Well, that was definitely something I wanted to transition to, because we certainly talked about the history and the heritage, but today poetry is alive and well with the younger poets of Ireland. And are there some names that we might look for that you can direct to us, or is there a source that you would recommend if someone from another country wanted to tap into poetry from poets from Ireland? Where might they look?
I can definitely get you more detailed information on that, Joy, if that's okay. I might initially be able to just give it to you here right now. I can definitely find the names of these poets I'm talking about, and I can get them to you.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we get your email address for our viewers that may want to follow up on this, because this is very fascinating to anyone who looks for history and culture through poetry. So Cathal, could you give us your email, or how would you want people to connect with you, our viewers?
My email is fine, Sister Joy. You may have that, no problem. I can give it to you over right here now.
Yes, please.
I'll email it to you. It's Tony, Tony, full stop, Treanor @gmail.com. So if anybody wants to contact me about further information, I'll be happy to email them.
So is that Tony.Trainer or just Tony Trainer?
No, Tony.Trainer. There's a full stop between it.
Yes,
so it's
okay.
full stop, Treanor @gmail.com.
Got it. So we definitely want to be able to let folks know, our viewers know, how they can make that connection with the Irish poetry community. Thank you so much, Cathal. And
just say before we go on, sorry, Joy, it occurs to me that there's one site called Poetry Ireland. To type in Poetry Ireland, that's both a publishing house and a site that advertises, celebrates, and hosts modern Irish poetry. And it was that particular site that ran the session in which I mentioned about that young poet, and other young poets as well were featured. That was the site that hosted it. So if you check out Poetry Ireland.
Got it. PoetryIreland.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send you this information, Joy. I'll email it to you too.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely let our Sojourn with Words family know that they can be in touch and check out more poets from Ireland on that site. Now we're going to hear some poetry by Cathal. Cathal Trainer, thank you so much for being with us today. And I understand you've got a few poems that you'd like to share. We're ready to hear them. And Sojourn with Words viewers, it is my privilege to share the wonderful poetry, to hear the wonderful poetry of Cathal Trainer, all the way from Ireland. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Joy. Here we go. The first one I'd like to read to you is just called Homeland. Reflects my own memories of living in the countryside as I grew up. So, Homeland. That space that falls between a sense of place and the marked footsteps of memory can lead by way of trick of fate to a wished-for land of the heart where the home lies. Where the water cupped from a woodland well is tasted the sweetest, where the heat from the summer sun warmed softly on the skin. When the strength of youth was at its zenith, and the geography of the heart was mapped by native hill and field, by native stream and lake, and the murmuring soft and low of young friends in the purpling night of a warm summer. Walking home from a townland dance, past the farmer's milk churns set out in the fields like dolmen stones, that we tipped gently over on their edges for a mouthful of milk to cut the evening's thirst. Home to burnt days of hayseed air that raw the lungs with every breath, shaved fields of hay and baling twine. The dust motes dancing on the sunlight's afterglow, whose rays lingered lazily across the bar counter of our country pub, dimming to the measured tick of a smoke-browned wall clock. Here, in such a place, we spent our harvest wages. Sunburnt, we ached under every movement of our arms, every brush of our shirts against the blistered heat of our skins. Here, shaded now from the sun's heat, we gulped the apple smack of the first draught of cold cider from the cask. Now in my time of remembering, the country tracks meander, stretching out before my mind's eye, embraced like sleepy hanging trees. In a shining instant of the summer's haze, as the shadows of evening cool towards a golden moment of memory that is just in sight of the dreaming eye. Homeland. And the next one I'd like to read to you is about heritage. A few months ago, a full set of chainmail was found dug up in a farmer's backyard in the middle of Ireland. And it turned out to be an incredible discovery. It turned out to be a full set of chainmail in complete, absolutely intact. And it was thought to be 800 years old from the first Norman knights that came to Ireland. And so it's called a Hauberk, Norman French Hauberk, Hauberc. And so this is a short poem about that, imagining what these first knights must have seen as they entered the wildness of the countryside of Ireland at that time in order to conquer it 800 years ago. And it's called Hauberk. In the middle lands of Line, drop deep within the bog lane black turf, dark sunk squelched it lay, unremembered under dead Clark clay, covered for centuries in iron link deep, mail shorted the chail each link, and chain each link, torque turnings in time and space, Norman named Hauberk. 800 years had passed since its wearer had held fast to build moat-mounted bailey in a deep deed done to conquer. To subdue painted Caltoy, to break with sword and shield, to destroy their ring-rounded wall forts with bow, armoured arms and horse. When last he wore that mail, when he who wore that mail looked out on an Irish sky and hailed the russet morn, did he let his falcon fly in air and to greet a new dawning there? And so that is my imaginings of Norman knight who wore that piece of chainmail. Heritage. The next one is associated with heritage as well. It's called a loy. Loy was a type of digging tool which was used to plant potatoes, particularly in the side of hills and mountains in the 19th century and before it. And this is just about a farmer using this particular implement to dig and plant potatoes. The loy you can find out about in Wikipedia. They do a very good article on it. The loy. As he bends to his task, Loy's shaft held hard as stone. The digging boot holds fast on willow step drives home. Loy's shaft held hard as stone. The bladed steel cuts deep as willow step drives home in chocolated peat. The bladed steel cuts deep the womb of motherland, and chocolated peat the seed in holy ground. The womb of motherland, the loy upturns the grass, the seed in holy ground, stalked potatoes to dress. The loy upturns the grass as he bends to his task, stalked potatoes to dress as digging boot holds fast. The loy, that was a loy. There's another poem I'd like to read for you now too, and it's more about a well. Wells were very holy and sacred in Ireland, still are. And this is about a well, meaning all the wells you can find in Ireland. They're usually hidden, you have to look for them now. A well. In a wood there was a well. Her mouth frond crested, moss-clotted with lichen stone, embracing dark water there, pure and sharp, that seeped deep to her source underground in the wound earth, birthing her waters upwards to stream forth to welcoming sunlight, nourishing the earth mother. From her flowing waters, sweet and cold, the air made fresh by her water zest, laden with musk of tree and fern. A healing place for body and spirit, where the pagan rhymes with myth in harmony with the gods of wood and stone, and well water dark with memory. That was the well. And what I'd like to do is finish up with, we'll address a period in Ireland, and this is history now, this is linking to the land via history. There was a great hunger here in the middle of the 19th century, everybody knows about it. A million left the shores, a million died. And this poem is called Hunger, short little poem. And I think it could address anybody who currently is somewhere in the world is hungry, is not known, they're either dying alone and nobody knows of them, and they're suffering from hunger. So it's as much relevant today as it was describing this terrible event that happened in Ireland between 1845 and 1852. Hunger. Hunger stretched out thought and tension that rages on a rack of hurt. We're breathing in full breaths and gulps of scalding fire that sides and waves. It's withering on tightened skin and coiling flame of gnawing need that hangs upon the thickened tongue where words sounded to drowning die. The length of days and lingering hours, that sickly slow, seat-tortured time in measured beats of gulping gasps, of clawing air and searing sips. Despair in black is moaning clad, rouses upon her dreadful watch, embracing in her drowsy sleep, hunger crowned in his thorns of pain. And if there's time, I will finish with one more poem for you. If there's time for it, I will. But...
Okay, we can do one more.
Okay, it's called Moments in Time and Space. Moments in time and space. Kaleidoscopic sounds dance. Words in tune rhyme to rhyme rhymed. Rhythm and time timed into the measure of a pulse or a water droplet stretched and pulled on a flowered stem, falling slowly. Moments in time and space. Fingers of sunlight touching the water skin, refracted in a prism like rutted steel, cold and even, rough to the touch. As on a summer's day in June, the wine-full beaker beckoned to the lip, gulped down in grateful grasps, the grape juice nectar necked to the dregs. A forest pool in a shaded glade. Below the surface, algae green blooms, while frond-bladed underwater plants wave in lazy rhythm. Then neath, sparkling on the outcrop, shimmering pieces of light looped and break on gunmetal rock that in flinted touch rasps on the passing hand, rubbing the rock's rough surface slowly. Moments in time and space. Face-wet stones, the pool's edge, become warm to the sun's touch. The pebbles plop disturbs the glassing surface, sending ripples of crinkled water circling outwards from the source. Small fish darting, wet round about in the undertow. The water slapstones lie in lichen moss silence. Moments in time and space, worded in sound. That's it, Joy. Thank you very much for listening to me. Back to you.
Thank you, Cathal. Wonderful, wonderful. Cathal, because of the language, the accent, I'm going to make a request, and you tell me if this is something that is possible. If our viewers would like to see your poems in print form, is that an option?
Oh, that's fine. There's no problem at all. You have my email address.
Yes.
If people would like a copy of the poems even, I have no problem sending them to them and they can read them. I
think it would be phenomenal for persons to view this and have the poems in front of them as well. Because, as you know, once the program airs, once this episode airs, we will later provide a YouTube link so that individuals and viewers can enjoy it repeatedly, share it with friends, and to have copies of your poetry while viewing this episode, I think would be a double treat. So let's see if we can't make that happen.
Well, as I say, I've given my email address over the air, and by all means, send them out to whoever you communicate with you on your own website. And as I say, if people want to email me, if they're interested, just tell me the poem they'd like to see, and I'll send them a copy. There's no problem.
Wait, great. Well, that wraps us up. That's our time for today. Thank you, Cathal. Cathal Trainer from Ireland, from Limerick, Ireland. We're very happy to have you with us. And for all of our Sojourn with Words viewers, remember to pick up a pen and keep writing. And let us know what you think about Sojourn with Words featured poets, such as our guest poet today, all the way from Ireland, Cathal Trainer. Thank you so much, Cathal.